Welcome to Womb Talk. I'm your host, Elizabeth Vanderwalt, the owner and founder of Fruitful Womb Doula Services. In Womb Talk, we like to go over different topics that are acceptable for all audiences. We're not medical professionals. Actually, this time we do have a medical professional on the episode, but everything on this podcast is still just to educate you so that you can make better choices for your body. If you have a passion for all things women's health, then let's start listening. Today we have the lovely Dr. Brittney Anderson with us. You are a family medicine physician and a private practice owner. So tell us a little bit about yourself. And I'd also love to know what made you choose medicine. Like what got you really, what was that passion to get you there? So please.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for having me. First of all, it has been just a joy talking with you the last couple of minutes before we started recording. You have such a great spirit. So I'm very happy to know you and to be able to chat with you today. So you're right. I'm a family medicine physician, a board certified family medicine doc. I have a private practice in rural Alabama, actually. Opened the private practice just under 3 years ago and love it. It has taken off like gangbusters. We are so busy and so full all the time, and that's been great. I chose medicine, my parents say, at a really early age. They say I was 5 and 6 years old saying I wanted to be a doctor and never changed my mind. I love practicing medicine. And when people ask me why I went into it, I say that the answer that we always tell people interviewing for medical school to not say, and that answer is, I just want to help people. I have no better answer than that, right? Like, I literally just want to help people. It's the equivalent to like the pageant, I want world peace answer, I think. But that is very much it. I love the idea of helping people and really getting to a point now where our clinic is full and we're super busy, but I want to help even more people and get outside of the walls of our clinic. So I love the idea of podcasting and kind of creating long form content. So again, I'm really appreciative of you letting me come on and be able to share with your listeners and your audience today.
Well, that's awesome. And I love the fact that you chose like at 5 and 6 years old. I am also a preschool teacher on the side.
Oh, yes.
So this month we're doing community helpers and one of the girls wants to be a rock star band. So now my brain is just like, is there a chance that she might actually be a rock star band?
There is 100% chance. I'm living proof that she will be a rock star. Get ready.
Well, I mean, if you're a stubborn enough person and you make up your mind, I mean, anything is possible.
Exactly. You figured it out. And so has she, it sounds like. There you go.
So today you were going to come on and talk to us about the 10 ways to commit to your best health. So I guess I'll just get you to get started. And then, if I'm just like, hey, Dr. Anderson, can I ask a question? I'm just going to interrupt you. And then you'll just be like, okay.
No, absolutely. Like I said, just as chatting before this, I know we're going to have a good time. I've got, 10 things in front of me. Please feel free to stop me at any time and say, hey, what do you mean when you say that? Or, ad lib, anything that you want to put in there. That is absolutely fine with me. So I am going to go over 10. We'll start with the first one. And this is prioritizing regular checkups and screenings. And so it is so important to make sure, let me get my hair out of the way. It is so important to make sure that you are scheduling these regular exams. And so once a year, you need to be seen in a primary care office, whether that is, women following with their GYN every year or following with their family medicine doc. And that is to make sure that we are staying in control of our health. So one of the things that I'll talk about later is being a really strong advocate for your health. But there's so many things that we want to make sure we're staying on top of. Just like when we're kids, we're getting those regular screenings to make sure that developmentally we're where we need to be and nutrition-wise we are where we need to be. The same thing happens to us as women as we age. There's certain screening that we need. We need to get our mammograms done. We need to get our pap smears done. We need to have our cholesterol checked, and we need to be tracking our blood pressure. So there's so many things that we would benefit by. There's so many things that we would get benefit from if we were getting those regular screenings done. In addition to doing those regular screenings, just in general, prioritizing your health. So whether it's making notes on your phone and the notes app, or if it's getting you a notebook that you jot things down, really making sure that you are aware of your health so that you're jotting down blood pressure numbers, that your family history, really taking those steps to make your health a priority. So for me, that's number one.
That's a good number one. I like it. I had tried to keep track with a health journal, but after writing down headache and tired for like 15 days in a row, I was like, okay, so we're just going to it's just that.
Yeah, but that's the thing. When you write something like that, especially in a journal, like you mentioned so many times, then it makes you say, you know what? If there are 30 days in a month and 15 of them I'm writing I've got a headache and I'm
Yeah.
tired, then boom, you got your first reason there to be
Yeah.
getting in for that checkup to see what's going on. So that is the part about journaling that I do
Yeah.
really, really like. So yeah, absolutely. I love that. The second tip that I would give to women as far as ways that we can commit to our best health is nourishing our body with a balanced diet. And when I think about a balanced diet, I think about one, making sure that we're getting in breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and some healthy snacks, making sure that our plate looks balanced. And so when we think about the plate, and I talk to my patients about what a healthy plate looks like, when you think about a round plate, so I tell them that half of that plate should be fruits and vegetables, right? Fruits and vegetables of your choice. A quarter of that plate should be your protein source. So even if you're vegetarian, getting a protein source. If not vegetarian, if you eat meat, making it a lean meat for that other quarter of the plate. And the other remaining quarter of that plate should be a carb, should be a carb or should be a starch. Carbs get such a bad rep, and to a little bit of a degree, they should, because we overdo it sometimes as people. But our brain needs carbs. We need to function. We've just got to be smart about what those carbs are. And so making sure that women are getting a balanced diet, that they're getting a healthy diet, that they're getting plenty of fiber in their diet. And a lot of times, if we put a little bit of extra time into it and we do some meal planning or meal prep, or we even using a journal, like you said, and write down for the week what I'm going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. For some people, myself included, that helps us to stick to that schedule and making sure that we're getting balanced meals in.
Yeah. I'm very blessed that my sister, I live with my family still, and she's the private chef. So
Oh,
she's all into that for me. I'm
I
like,
love
I
it.
just come to dinner and I try to eat what I
Oh my gosh, I'm
can.
I'm immediately jealous. That
I
is so
know
funny.
everybody is. That's why I always tell her, I'm like, I owe you everything. Like, you just
Yeah,
tell me what you want, I get it for you. I'll
absolutely.
work, and you
I'm
just you stay home and cook for me.
yeah, absolutely. I'm immediately jealous because me in the kitchen is it's a good time. It's a good
Well,
time and usually a long time.
I will take a side sweep for a second because I was just reading an article and I was trying to find the research into it. But had you heard, and if you know it, even tell us, I heard that carbs are actually very beneficial for our hormone health. And that actually, those that cut it out, that kind of messes with the hormones a bit too. So, since you were just mentioning that they get a bad rep, I was just kind of curious if you knew
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, I haven't seen that new research, but we've long known that carbs are important for brain health
Yeah.
and for just normal kind of actions that our body needs. When we think about carbs and kind of that breakdown into sugar, I tell patients your body needs sugar. Sugar is
Yeah.
important. It's just that matter of not overdoing it, right? And thinking about moderation. And I think that's the issue with so many things. So again, sticking to that quarter of a plate for the carbs or for the starch, we don't want to cut it out altogether. Yes, if you go a couple days or so without them, then maybe that's fine. But these no carb diets, I think sometimes get just a little bit wild.
I'm not the best person. I don't do no carbs. I grew up on meat and potatoes for breakfast or for dinner.
There
So
you go. There you go. Now we're saying just put those potatoes in moderation.
yeah.
That's all. Add some broccoli and green beans to that plate
Yeah.
too. So yeah, so going on to the third one is moving your body regularly. So we talked about getting those regular checkups and screenings. That was one. Two was nourishing your body with a balanced diet. Three is moving your body regularly. And regularly is whatever that looks like for you, right? As you mentioned, being with preschoolers, I can imagine that you are getting much more movement than other people may be, but really making sure that you're getting that regular activity in. And even if we were to take it a step further, doing that a dedicated length of time. Some people say just what I say sometimes, I'm up all the time in clinic, I'm going from room to room all through the day, I get my steps in through the day. And yes, that's good, but that's just intermittently done, right? So I
Yeah.
get up, I walk to a room, I see a patient. But when I get in their room, I sit down and then I get up again and go to my office. And that's how I'm getting my steps in. I love it when patients can dedicate that 20 to 30 minutes at a time of getting that regular exercise in, which I think is so important. But that doesn't have to be boring exercise, right? If you find walking is boring or you don't like running, then make that 20 minutes a dance party. Put on some
Yep.
Taylor Swift, some Beyonce, whatever you got, and have a good old fashioned dance party for 20 minutes, and you may get more calories burned than somebody who's out walking around their neighborhood. So you can really modify that exercise to whatever feels best for you.
Dance is absolutely the best. I got that from my grandmother.
There
She always told me, she was like, when I was younger, it was laundry work and then I was going dancing. And
there
to
you
this
go.
day I still love the dance. I inherited that from her.
There you go. And that's wonderful. And, I think, whatever way works for you. And so, again, it doesn't have to be some strict, walking regimen or things like that. If you can give me some dedicated time of getting your heart rate up and it's something you like to do, go for it, whatever works for you.
I love it.
And so that's three, moving your body regularly. Four gets into one that is easier to say, but for a lot of people, harder to do. And that is making sure you get quality sleep. All right. And so when we think about adults, most adults need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Now, there are very few people who, can get by on 5 or 6 hours, but it's not as many people as think they can, right? And so that's minimum amount of sleep needed for most adults is 7 hours. And we don't want you just to be in bed for 7 hours, but you need to be asleep and getting good sleep. And my recommendation for that a lot of times for people is to start winding down for sleep, right? So many of us are go, go, go all through the day. We've got our computers up in front of us, our phones in our hands, scrolling until the minute we, put it down and close our eyes and try to go to sleep. And it's just too much excitement and too much energy for us to think that our body will just magically shut off and say, okay, now it's time to go to bed. So I love the idea of like that 30-minute wind down before bedtime to see or to give your body time to adjust to, hey, we are going into a calmer period of the night, and we want to be mentally and physically ready for that. And so, just as important as having that wind down time, I tell people getting to where you are going to sleep at the same time at night and waking up at the same time in the morning. Even, and this is the hard part, even on the weekends, on vacations, all those things, you don't want to trick your brain into thinking, okay, I don't know when, or you don't want your brain to think, I don't know when she's going to wake up tomorrow. Let me take a nap in the middle of the day, that kind of thing. You want to set sleep time and a set wake time as best you can.
That's the hard part with traveling. Like we've got a big like road trip coming up and we have to start leaving to drive at 6 a.m. But then there's like a 3 hour like time change in between and you're like,
Ooh.
it's gonna be nuts for sleeping. I just already know
Yeah,
it.
time changes are tough. Yeah, time changes are tough, and there are periods. You're absolutely right, and there are certain instances where you say, okay, I know your sleep's going to be thrown off for these couple days, or even these couple weeks. But generally, long term, trying to give
Yeah.
yourself the best chance to say, all right, this is my regular kind of circadian rhythm. This is when my body gets ready to be asleep. This is when my body wants to wake up. I think is so important. And so having that good sleep hygiene is important also. And in that, I tell people that the bed is for sleep. We should not be reading in bed. We shouldn't be eating in bed. We shouldn't be watching TV in bed. The bed is for sleep. Sleep and sex is what I tell my patients. Other than that, don't do it in the bed. And my
I
patients
love
laugh
it.
at me, but I mean it absolutely. You want your brain to think when it gets in bed, all right, only one of two things is about to happen in this bed. Not, you don't want your brain keying your body up to get ready to watch a movie or to eat breakfast or any of those things otherwise.
I know. Well, I find personally that if you get illness, that's when it throws everything off. I've
Yeah.
had it a lot that like last year I got sick like so many times because preschoolers. And
Yeah.
so so every time I would get sick, my whole schedule would just go off. Sleeping, just like your regular to-dos that you do during the day. To
Yeah. That
get
makes so
back
much
on the
sense.
wagon to go back into doing it is very tricky. So every time I got sick, I'm like, oh, now I got to try to figure out how to do the schedule again.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because, when we're sick, most of us were kind of just lounging for most of
Yeah.
the day, right? So you
Yeah.
may spend that extra time in bed or extra time laying on the sofa and you just completely throw your body off. And I can't fault you for that because when I'm not feeling well, I stay in the
What else
bed
do you do?
and lounge on. Yeah, exactly. What is there to do? Exactly. So yeah, that's number four then, prioritizing quality sleep. And that one again is a tough you. But gosh, what change we could make if we could prioritize our sleep to get better sleep. The next one is managing stress effectively. Now, do you have any things that you like to do to manage stress? I've got a couple in mind, but I'll kick it over to you to see if maybe anything you've got to say is similar to my list.
I used to do breath work a lot, and that
Yeah.
that really helped a lot because I would find any time because I get a bit anxious with driving. So anytime I was like
Mhm.
getting more nervous, I watched this guy do funny breath work with weird sounds, and that really I don't know that attracted me. I've got a very quirky personality, so I was quick to jump into it because I'm like, okay. And then of course, don't drive with anyone at the same time because they're gonna start laughing at you, which
100%.
it's distracted driving if you're all laughing so hard. But here you are just like, whoo, and you're making like a funny sound with it. But that helped. And that was like, helped me with my nerves a bit and kind of got out of it. But I want to get back into it for sure. So,
Yeah, that's so fantastic. And it's so wild that you say that. I host a podcast just like you, and I've got a guest coming on. My next guest is literally talking about breath work. And it is just, it's an idea, excuse me, that is so foreign to me. I don't know much about it all. So I'm so excited. So it's
you'll have to
really
send me a
wild
link.
that you
I'll
say the
definitely
same
listen
thing.
to that.
Oh, 100%. I will. I think it's so cool. And I'm excited to learn more. So breath work, I think, is fantastic. Meditation can be really helpful for some people. Taking a walk, getting outside, getting some sunlight in can be good for people. And just generally being mindful, right? So finding kind of what is your center. If what is your center, what brings you in, and what allows you to kind of shut everything else out, right? Hobbies may be a way to do that. If you like painting, then maybe it's your jam. If you like cooking, maybe that's it. If you like crocheting, finding something that you can do that kind of makes you forget about everything else that's going on, even if it's only temporary. I think that's important. But the breath work, I love. I think it's a big one. There's so many correlations to chronic health issues and stress and mental health problems. And so that mind body connection, it's really real. And if we can limit our stress and reduce our stress, then we absolutely reduce the risk of hypertension, of heart disease, all types of chronic health issues that can lead to really significant problems. So breath work is a really good one. I
Yeah.
love it.
Well,
Love it.
stress, it's one of those really big problems that, like I think every single person that I've had on this podcast, whenever they're giving a tip, it always involves that you got to like lower the stress. And I'm like,
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
are trying things and if it's just not working, sometimes it's more of like a really big mental block sometimes, right? In
Yeah,
us.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It literally is number 5 and number 6 for me. So number 5 is managing your stress. Number 6 is like nurturing your mental and emotional health. And I separated them out, although they probably really could be combined into
Combined.
one. Yeah, but when I think about kind of nurturing your emotional health, I think about that as looking into options of therapy. I've gotten to a point in my life where I think everybody needs a therapist. Literally, I'm there. I'm at that point, and we're in this I don't know if I'll call it a crazy time or a wild time or a wonderful time, where you've got access to therapy without having to leave your house,
Yeah.
right? So you've got options for teletherapy. You've got all these apps that are there. You can get on TikTok and find a therapist that you like who every day is giving some information there. And I think that's fine. It's a good way to get info, but I feel like there's maybe not a wonderful substitute to actually be able to connect with someone
Yeah.
and let them give you kind of tips to make changes. And so just really being in tune with your mental health, I think is important.
Yeah, because the mind is a very fun place. I always say I'm like I don't want
It's
too much
something.
alone time with myself. Like if no one would want to listen to my head, I don't
Yeah.
either.
Well, you'd be surprised. There are people that literally that is what they're trained to do, and they're really good at it. And so I've got some really good friends who are fantastic therapists, and when I I'm always amazed at the transformation that I see in my own patients when they start therapy,
Yeah.
right? And I think another part of my practice so much is that I'm their family doc. I've been seeing them for years. I see their entire families, and folks come into my office and treat me as if I'm their therapist. I'm like, you know what? Like,
Not
I,
my
I,
job.
I know I'll do as much as I can, but we're going to get to a point where I'm going to tell you, you need to go to someone who is literally trained to do this because I've tapped out at the advice that I can give. I got my own problems.
But take it as
So
a good sign. That means you're a safe space for them, that they
that's
feel
right.
comfortable not coming to. I mean, where I live, I mean, I've moved, but at least with the healthcare professionals that I have found, I've never gone to the place where I felt there was like a safe space.
Oh,
So
right.
that's a nice thing to have. Like that means you're doing a really
Well,
good job and you're being a really good doctor, because they're hard to find.
there you go. Well, I will take that for just that. Then I joke and tell my patients, if they come in, they're having a tough time, I'll say, if they're in exam room 4, I say, you know what, room 4, you can put your name on it if you want to. If you need to come back in here every day and sit in room 4, that is what you do, and I'll come in here and we'll sit and talk for a little while, and that's fine. But I know my limits, and I know when to call a friend who is a licensed therapist and ask for a little bit of help too.
I love it.
So yes, monitoring and really nurturing your mental and emotional health is important. Number 7, and you kind of started talking about this a little bit earlier, was paying attention to hormonal changes. That's so big for us, right? Not only is it getting through that space of puberty, which we all remember in adolescence, but we continue to see these hormone shifts certainly as we go deeper into adulthood. So we
Yeah.
think about estrogen and progesterone and cortisol and all these significant hormones, our thyroid hormones, that are really important for managing not just our menstrual cycle, but also our mood, right? And so our mood, our body temperature, just think about regulation in general. And so as we get into our late 30s, late 40s, certainly into our early 50s, we think about that drop in estrogen, and progesterone, and this onset of perimenopause and then menopause. And that is a really real time for a lot of women, that presents like hot flashes or mood swings, night sweats, irritability, all these things that so many women experience, and sometimes only experience them within themselves, and don't bring those questions to other women who have gone through the same thing, or to their medical professionals or physicians, and say, hey, what can I do to get through this? Are there options to help treat this? Or how long do I have to go through this? Or just, to ask for a little bit of help with it. And so, kind of being in tune to those hormonal changes and knowing that when you start to see those changes, it's not something that you have to keep within yourself, but you can have a discussion with your healthcare provider, your physician, about it to see kind of what steps you can take.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I mean, it's something that I talk about often, is how much hormones change. I mean, I
Yeah,
know I go through emotional or hormonal change, it seems, every single day.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then number 8 is prioritizing bone health, right? And so this kind of goes hand in hand with those hormonal changes, and certainly with age, as women continue to get a little bit older, it's making sure that that we are watching our calcium and vitamin D intake, certainly as we get into perimenopause and menopause age. So being careful with that, making sure that we're doing more weight bearing exercises when we get to the age that we need to have screening done for osteoporosis, so that weakening of our bones, that we're doing those things as well. And so that's something that I think we as women tend not to think about as much, until we get to that age and your doctor says, hey, it's time for you to get a bone scan. So I really encourage that intake of the appropriate amount of vitamin D and calcium. And that's what's gotten just through a daily multivitamin. I'm a fan of a daily multivitamin, especially in folks who don't get a good kind of balanced regular diet in. I love a daily multivitamin, and it gives us that extra vitamin D and calcium that is so important for maintaining good bone health.
I think vitamins are always handy. I'm on a few of myself. I was a picky eater, and I kind of am still for a very long time. So
Love it.
Flintstone vitamins. Hopefully, they're still kicking
Absolutely.
in the background.
Absolutely. I love it. I was definitely a Flintstone vitamin kid too.
Yes.
That's too funny. That's funny. So number 9 then becomes limiting exposure to toxins. Now, I use the term toxins. I think toxins is actually the term that I mean, right? And
Yeah.
so I think about just the things that are in our foods, right? The things that are in our foods, the things that our body is exposed to that we just don't need, right?
Yeah.
And anything that truly is in excess of what our body needs is a toxin to you. That could be getting too much sugar in your food. It could be, artificial sugars. It can be in foods that are too heavily processed. It can be, um, you know, the oh, I lost my train of thought there. It could be dyes that are in our food, right? So just being really mindful of the things that you're eating, getting too much sodium in your food. I count that as a toxin when you've taken it to excess. So really it gets back to that idea of I don't want to call it clean eating, but just mindful eating, right? So
Yeah.
being really careful that even if you're eating something that is canned, I tell my patient a lot of times, anything that comes on a can is usually going to have a good bit of salt in it because that salt is what it makes it live on the shelf, right?
Yeah.
So I've got no problem with you eating a can of green beans, but I want you to rinse those green beans off really good before you actually go to eat them because they're usually so much salt that's in them. So just being careful about those types of things and making sure that we're not putting excess amount of unnecessary things into our mouths. And so those are kind of dietary toxins, but then also just being aware of things that your body doesn't respond to well. So that could be cleaning products that you use or skin care products that you use. If the body breaks out from them, the body doesn't like it, right? Find
Yeah.
something a little bit milder, a little bit calmer to use on your skin otherwise. Just that's number nine, just limiting exposure to toxins and things that you come into contact with that your body doesn't like or doesn't need. I think that's important.
And that's a very big one because the world's filled with so much junk.
It is. It
it's
really is. It
it's
really
like
is.
you're walking through a garbage zone and you're trying to just figure out how do
Yep. And
I
figure out
live.
what of this. Yeah. What of this can I take?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And then number 10 is one that you and I talked a good bit about
Yeah.
before, and that is listening to your body and advocating for yourself. Is there, and I can go on and on about that one. Is there any direction that you want me to head into talking about
I mean,
advocating for
you
yourself?
could just start. I was kind of thinking also like on how to advocate like with medical appointments or because like this podcast
Yeah,
is for just women in general. But
yeah.
I'm always telling people, like, especially some of my clients, like, look into what like blood tests you kind of maybe need prior. I mean, I've done it. Some of
Oh,
my
absolutely.
healthcare providers have not been too happy with me when I'm like, hey, I'd love
Yeah.
this test, but
Yeah, and so absolutely, I did a whole episode. Literally, my first episode on my podcast was preparing for your next doctor's appointment because I think that's so important. And to piggyback off of what you just said, if it, and I think I said this with no hesitation, if you go into your physician's office, your doctor's office, and you are doing your best to be an advocate for your own health, and you get pushback for that, then you're at the wrong place.
yep.
Right? Because this should be a two-way thing. Sometimes I get patients, especially new patients, and we'll be talking and I'll say, well, what do you think about this? Or, we could do this one thing or we could do this thing. Which one sounds better to you? And sometimes new patients are absolutely shocked because they're like, why are you asking me? You're the doctor, you went to medical school. And my response to them is, if I think there's only one answer, I'm going to tell you that this is the only answer and this is what I think we ought to do. But that's almost never the case. You've always got an option. And I think that when you give patients the opportunity um, to to be active participants in their health, then they overall are one, they're better patients, right?
Yeah.
And two, they're healthier. At the end of the day, they are healthier. And those patients that you let be advocates for themselves then really get in tune with their own body, right? And they are more likely to come in and say, hey, Dr. Anderson, something just isn't right. Like, is this something we can look into? And I believe them, and I know that they know the change because I know all along they've been really active participants in their care. So, one thing that I mentioned in that recent episode of my podcast that I did in talking with patients, or with the listeners, is preparing for your doctor's appointment. And so, when you know you've got an appointment coming up, I mean, Elizabeth, how many times have you had a doctor's appointment coming up and you're like, oh, I'm going to make sure I ask my doctor this, and this when I go there. And then you get back in your car and you're like, oh my God, I forgot to ask that, and that. Right?
I'm the person that comes with notes. I literally
Oh,
had it.
I love it.
I had an
I love
abscess
it.
last year, and I went to the ER. And my dad's like, "What we got? We wrote it down. We had a huge paper, and so even on the paper, because I have sarcasm like nobody's business. That's what I told him. It felt like there was an alien egg inside my throat, and I wrote it down on paper, and he laughed so hard.
There you go. Yeah. So you are the example of what I'm asking people to do because
Yeah,
so many people don't do that. And so what I encourage folks to do is jot down a list. And so that goes back to planning for your appointment in advance, right?
Yeah.
But if it's, not I call today, I've got something going on today, then yes, you go in for that one thing. You don't go in for your long list. But otherwise, if you know you've got an upcoming appointment, get the notes app going in your phone and say, you know what, I need to ask about my cholesterol. I need to ask about my blood sugar. I need to ask about this rash on my leg. I need to ask why my hair is thinning. And so you make a list of those things so that when you go in the appointment, you're going for your regular checkup, but there ought to be a time at that appointment that the doctor says, hey, do you have any questions for me? And if there's not, that's also a red flag. That's a problem too, right? But that's when you pull that list. Now, I very much, as a physician, I understand the need to be efficient, right? And knowing that I'm probably already 20 minutes behind, if not more than that, when I walk in your room. And so I don't want that list to have 15 things on it because we're not going through all 15 of them. So what I ask my patients to do, and what I told my listeners recently to do, is to put a little star or an asterisk beside the top 5 things. The
Yeah.
top 5 things that you are not going to leave there unless you have an answer to. And if you are able to pick out, all right, these things are the most important. But yeah, if I get there early and they had a cancellation after me and they've got a little bit of extra time, then I can talk about 6 through 15. But I would, as the doc, I would say if you've got 15 things we need to discuss, then you need to be coming in probably a little bit more often than once a year, right? So we need to follow up. But I love that idea of thinking about questions in advance. I can't tell you how many times in a day I ask my patients before I leave the room, hey, is there anything else, that we need to talk about today? And they're like, you know what, Dr. Anderson, there was something else that I was going to ask you. There was something else. And they just sit there. And so I just sit there and I'm like, well, I'm not going to just sit here all day for you to think of what that thing was. I've got to go see my next patient. And so usually I'll try to come up with something else. I'll start, jotting in their chart or, doing something, writing their lab order or doing something otherwise. But if they don't come up with it, within a couple seconds, then I'm going to say, all right, well, if you think about it before you leave, grab the nurse. And if I'm not in the room, I'll see you before then. But imagine how much more efficient that appointment could be for both
Yeah.
me as the doc and for the patient if they came in ready with those questions already. And what I tell people is having the questions is not enough. If the goal is to get answers to the questions, then no, you don't have to sit down in the room while the doc is there and write down what their answer is. But as soon as you leave that appointment, you can even do it. You can go back out into the waiting room and sit there, but jot down those answers as soon as you can, right? So that it's not a week later and you're like, oh my gosh, what did Dr. Anderson say I was supposed to do about, XYZ? And so I like the idea of kind of that follow up and making sure that you know the answers to those questions and that you remember them. And then when you're in the room with the other big part of advocating for me is asking questions if you don't understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
We learn all these medical terms in medical school and in our residency training and just in general. And we as physicians sometimes feel like everyone is supposed to understand all these words that we throw out. And that is false, right? And that's a fallacy on our part because that should never be the case. There are lots of medical words that I don't even know what they mean, let alone ones that I use every day, but I do know what they mean that my patients don't understand. And so, again, you want to be really careful in choosing your physician, that you're choosing someone who will slow down and break things down for you if you need them to. The last thing you want to happen is that you get back into your car, you get on the bus or the train or whatever after the visit, and you have no idea what went on in that appointment. That is the absolute worst thing that could happen because you got nothing out of it, right? You got nothing out of it, and sometimes it may even be if the doctor's in and out pretty quick, it may be that you need to grab the nurse afterwards and say, you know what, she or he said this, this, and this. Can you tell me what that means? And if they can't explain it to you, then that's even more reason somebody needs to go get the doc and ask her to come back here or him to come back in the room and explain it to you a little bit more. But having those questions in advance, jotting down your answers as soon after as you can, asking questions when you're in the appointment. And another big one I think is making sure you've got the follow-up plan, right?
Yeah.
So before you leave there, know what's supposed to happen next. If they drew blood today, when are y'all going to call me back to let me know the results? And that can be asked so nicely. It could be, oh, when should I expect to get results? right?
Yeah.
And they should be able to give you a length of time. And if they tell you, oh, we ought to have them back, in 2 days, then maybe give them 3 or 4 days. But if you've not heard from them, pick up the phone and call them, right?
Yeah.
It is 100% the responsibility of that medical office to give you your lab results, period, right? It is
Yeah.
their responsibility. I tell my staff that all the time, that if you call someone and they don't answer the phone, call them again. Like, it is our responsibility to let them know the results, whether they are good or bad. And that's one thing I tell my patients when they're there for their first appointment, is that if you don't hear back from us, I don't want you to just assume no news is good news. I want you to know your lab results, right? And
Yeah.
so if you don't hear from us, you call us, and don't just assume that everything is fine, because we may have put, a 9 instead of a 2 when we locked in your phone number in the chart, right?
Yeah.
And so if you don't hear back, make sure you call back. And the same thing if you're supposed to get, imaging done, if you're supposed to get a mammogram, or you're supposed to get colonoscopy scheduled, or if you're supposed to be referred somewhere. If you don't hear back, you got to call back. I worry sometimes when I see my patients for their 3 month follow up, and I'm like, hey, you never got that mammogram you were supposed to get. What happened? Or you never went and got that CT scan. And they say, oh, well, the hospital never called me to come. Well, I didn't want you to wait 3 months to get it. Like, if that doesn't happen, you got to call back. And so really making sure that you put that, as much as you put it on the office, that you put it on yourself too,
Yeah.
to make sure that you're doing those things
Take
you
your
need
health in
to
your own hands a little bit.
do. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And I love it. I already found how you can continue your education journey. Teach other doctors how to act like you. Just, I don't know if Canadian doctors just kind of suck, but I'm like, next time I need a doctor, I'm flying to Alabama, get
Come
my
to
passport.
Alabama. That's so funny. That's so funny. I mentioned earlier, I've got a private practice, and that's one of the things I love about private practice. And it honestly is why I left employee practice. And it is because it gives me the opportunity to practice the way I want to.
Yeah.
It practice in a way that I don't feel like I've got to rush through patients, and that I have to, meet a certain quota number of patients through the day. Our kind of tagline for our clinic, the name of my clinic is Anderson Family Care, and our tagline is caring for your family like family. And that is what I commit to every patient. I tell, new patients when they come in, that I'm going to talk to you like I talk to my aunts and my uncles and my cousins and my grandmother. And we're going to sit down and we're going to have a conversation in a way that you understand it. And we are going to, be respectful of each other, and that I'm going to respect you just as much as I want you to respect me. But at the end of the day, we've got to work together. There's no I'm better than you. Yes, I went to school perhaps for a little bit longer than that patient did to learn medicine, but at the end of the day, I've got to rely on the patient to be able to do the things that they need to improve their health. And so it really is important to both of us, to make sure that we are optimizing the patient's health, and that we're being, efficient of the clinic time and the staff.
I love it. I love it. Like I said, if you could teach to other doctors some of this
Yeah.
is definitely necessary.
Well, I do. We have, we have medical students and medical residents who come through all the time, and they love it when they get to come out. I think just private practice in general times gets a lot different than some of the things they see in hospital settings or in big employee groups.
Yeah.
But I do. I love that part of my job, getting to teach residents and medical students.
I love it. And so you've told us that you have a podcast a little bit. So where are they
Yes.
get? I think you already gave me the link to put in the description, but like just talk
Yeah.
about yourself a little bit, what you got for business stuff, how people could find you, work with you, and
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, we are super busy and full in the clinic, and so I've gotten into space where I can't take any new patients into my clinic right now, and but I still have this, desire to reach more people and to get outside of my clinic walls, to get outside of my town, to get outside of Alabama, and really hit as many folks as I can. And so, I created a podcast. So I did it actually for my birthday. My birthday was on the 5th of March. And on March 5th, I launched my new podcast. It's
yay!
called Headed to Health. I know, I'm so excited. I took a course, and the course just taught you how to launch a podcast. And I did it. I put a date on it and made it happen. And so, launched on March 5th. It's called Headed to Healthier. It airs every week. So it airs every Wednesday. And it's a combination of, so every other week is me just solo chatting it up. And every other week outside of that is with a guest. And so I've had like an orthopedic surgeon come on and talk about knee pain in women. We talk about sleep changes. We've had a nutritionist come on. OB-GYN has come on. And so I'm really excited about the healthcare colleagues who have agreed to come on, but also just for this opportunity to share more with women about their own health. It is pretty specifically for women who are busy, have other things going on, but have made this commitment to improve their health. And so we every week go over another topic that relates to women's health and really dive into it in just a relatable and conversational way. So just like your podcast, right? So
Yeah.
it's just a time to, we want to make sure that we meet people where they are and that it's conversational and loose and fun, but that we're also given really good information. So I'm excited about it.
I love it. Also, happy belated birthday.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And lastly, I'm making a huge compilation at the end of season 2. If you had
Okay.
one tip for women of any age, it could be about anything outside of even the medical field or just whatever you would like, what would that be? Just one tip.
So my one tip is put a date to it and do it.
Love it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So
Yes.
just like the podcast, right? I said my date is March 5th and I was going to take everything I needed to hit that date. So regardless of what that thing is, put a date on it and then get to work and put a date to it and do it.
I love it. I've told this a few times, but every time I ask that question, it's always new. It's always a new answer. I love it. It's so many fun. I cannot wait for the big compilation of it. It's gonna be
I love
beautiful.
it. I'll be looking for that. I love it. I love it.
Oh, well, this was so much fun and you gave us so much information. And if you decide you want an international person to become your patient.
Yeah. That'd be a whole other kind of telemedicine. I love it.
Thank you so much for joining us. And we will be having another episode next Monday. So stay tuned.